Hello everyone, welcome in this presentation where we will talk about Operation Diànxùn, which is a cyber espionage campaign that we uncovered last October targeting telecommunication companies. My name is Roccia. I'm a senior security researcher within the McAfee Advanced Threat Research team, and I'll be presenting this presentation with Thibault, Seret, which is a security researcher in our team as well. You can follow us on Twitter if you want to stay up to date of our future publication, and you can also take a look to the McAfee website to see the current research. In this presentation, we will talk about China's threat actor attribution and how it can be difficult to link the dots. We will talk about the Operation Diànxùn, mainly this cyber espionage campaign, where we have analyzed tactic, technique, and procedures, as well as operating method and tooling used in this specific campaign.
So basically, as Thomas mentioned before, we studied on this campaign in the last October 2020. And as we saw by looking at the TTPs and so on, this attack has been attributed by ourselves for Mustang Panda / Red Delta group, because as we are gonna talking about, there's a lot of similarities between both groups regarding techniques, overlapping between infrastructure and so on. This attack was targeting telecom sector in almost all over the world, in Europe and so on. There is also a lot of tools has been used regarding this campaign within infrastructure. And we are also gonna discuss about the methodologies that we used to map everything, the campaigns, the analysis, and so on, and make also some proposals to help the community to work on those kind of groups to map, attribute, and so on.
So when we are talking about China's threat actors, sometimes it can be difficult, and you probably know it if you are working on that specific threat actors. You may face a certain dilemma, mostly dealing with all the names related to China's threat actors. So sometimes it's very difficult to connect the dots or to be able to link everything. That's why it's very important to take in consideration some of the very important elements in your investigation, such as, for example, geopolitical context. In that case, it provides us more information about the motivation behind this attack, but also it provides you information from specific interest or economical interest from the threat actors and so on. So that's very interesting to study that part as well when you are tracking APT. We also rely on previous intelligence report, public knowledge, but also our own internal knowledge base where we are tracking specific APT actors. We rely as well on TTPs, operating methods, which is a big part of the investigation where you try to understand motivation as well, and methodology used by the attackers. We study as well indicator of compromise, and we classify them to identify similarities or differences. It can be infrastructure similarities or code overlapping and so on. And we also studying victimology, which is very interesting when you are talking about APT, because you mostly see trends sometimes about the victims in a specific campaign. But remember that we are talking about APT campaign. So sometimes when you have, or you think you have all the information, it may be more complicated than it appears. So I think it's part of the process to be able to always question ourselves about the information we are looking at and the data we are able to uncover.
Speaking about similarities and differences, with Thomas, we try to work on a correlation table, which means that we try to map all the overlapping between all those groups. As an example that we are trying to do with the techniques mapping between APT10 and NPT41, we saw that the same technique of bit flipping to inject some shellcode in portable executable signed by Microsoft without breaking the signature has been used during the last year and all over the year. But we're also trying to map overlapping on infrastructure, IPs, domains, and so on. At the moment, we have a first version that's going to probably be released in a few weeks. But it's still pretty difficult to work on that part, and also because since last week and so on, we saw that the Chinese government trying to recruit new actors every day and so on, which means that this correlation table is going to be a little bit difficult to push. But that's what we try to do. So as Thomas mentioned before, make some attribution regarding Chinese group is a little bit messy, and connect all those dots is pretty difficult, but that's something that we would like to push to the community in the further future. Something that we also would like to propose to the community is stop giving a new fancy name to an actor, a campaign, and so on, because at this moment we have some IPT1 to IPT99 that's really difficult to know, and also all the alternatives. Something that we would like to push is to attribute all those campaigns by operation and sectors, as we saw that, like as an example with this campaign, Red Delta and Mustang Panda try to target the same sector with a little period of difference. And that's something that we're trying to prove as well. And so yeah, basically classify all those actors by operation and campaign, because it's going to be more useful for the community and much more easier to understand what's happening.
So let's deep dive into our main topic, Operation Diànxùn. So here you have an attack overview. So as we mentioned, Operation Diànxùn was a cyberespionage campaign that allegedly targeting the telecommunication sectors based on our observation and analysis. The TTPs observed are very similar to known threat actor Mustang Panda as well as Red Delta. We will talk more about that in the next slide. We believe that Operation Diànxùn was mainly motivated by telecommunication sector and has to do or have a potentially something to do with Chinese 5G deployment. And we also identify several tools as well as infrastructure used in this campaign, such as a mix of customs and offensive tools such as Cobalt Strike, for example. So let's talk a bit about Mustang Panda versus Red Delta. Mustang Panda is a threat actor that was originally attributed by CrowdStrike in 2018. And Red Delta is a threat actor that was originally attributed by Recorded Future in 2020. It's very interesting to put that in perspective because there is a lot of similarity between this campaign that we believe that is part of the same same actors, because there is some overlapping with the infrastructure use, but also in the tooling use. It's also very interesting because Mustang Panda was previously known to target telecommunication, government, as well as NGO, while Red Delta was known to target religious organization as well as government. In this campaign, we identify many similarities in the TTPs, the operating methods, the infrastructure as well. Targets was also similar in some part, and we also identify some geopolitical interest or motivation that was similar as well. So when we analyze this campaign, we also wanted to have an overview of potential headline on the news, and here are some at the time of the analysis where we try to correlate that information with our observation and our analysis. So this was very interesting to be able to put that in perspective and to understand that it could have a similarity or at least a link between the campaign and the current international news. So let's talk now a bit about the tactics, techniques, and procedures. So first of all, the attackers use a fake website that was luring the original carrier.huawei website. And here it was using the carrier huawei.net as a lure to target users. They redirect the users to a fake Flash website that was used to in fact inject the stage 1 into the infected machine. So it was basically a fake Flash application that was used to fingerprint the machine. by checking the date, the geolocalization as well, and most of all, register and download the second stage. The second stage was mainly a .NET utility used for reconnaissance mechanism, as well as downloading additional payload, and most of all, injecting the final stage, which is a Cobalt Strike payload. There is an additional payload, which is a DLL, which was mainly used for checking if the machine was previously infected, but it was also used for persistence mechanisms. And finally, the last stage, that was a Cobalt Strike payload used to take the control of the remote machines. If we take a look to the infrastructures, so we discovered that there is some overlapping with previous attack attributed to Mustang Panda, and as well as the Red Delta actor. It was very interesting to put that in perspective to understand what kind of actors was behind the attack. And as we mentioned, there is two main websites that was used in this attack, at least for the initial compromise, which was the carrierhuawei.net. We haven't been able to uncover more information about that website because at the time of the investigation, the website wasn't available. But we have been able to get some information from the flash.cn website that was used to deliver the fake flash application. So when we talk about the fake flash application, as we mentioned, this one was mostly used to fingerprint the infected machines. It was mainly checking the Windows OS, the Windows version, basically checking as well what kind of .NET version was installed, and it was used to download the second stage accordingly to the remote server. The second stage, which is the .NET utilities, was used to perform additional mechanisms and reconnaissance on the infected machine, such as checking the AV running. It was also used for redownloading the first stage if there is some need to download additional stage or additional sample on the infected machines. It was used as well for persistence mechanisms by creating a scheduled task on the infected machines, and it has also the ability to download the Cobalt Strike payload encoded in base64 and store on a remote address. And it was used to download this Cobalt Strike payload in the temp folder with the name flashupdate.exe. It was also used to download an intermediary samples, which was mainly used to check if the previous stage was successful, but also used to perform additional action as well. And it has also the ability to perform some mechanisms, such as adding WMI backdoors by creating a permanent filter directly into the infected machine. And it has also the possibility to inject a shellcode into the clipboard, which is a known evasion mechanism. The intermediary DLL that we uncover as well was mainly used to check if the previous stage were successful or not, and it has also the ability to create a scheduled task on the infected machine. And finally, the stage 3, which was the final stage, which was downloading the Cobalt Strike payload used to remotely access to the infected machines and get more information about the sensitive data that the actors were looking for. If we talk about activity timeline, so first, activities related to Red Delta with samples, similar samples that we uncovered in Operation Diànxùn was discovered and published in May 2020. And at that time, Red Delta was targeting religious organization. From August to October 2020, we uncovered this campaign with overlapping with Mustang Panda infrastructures and TTPs. In December 2020, we discovered a new variant identified in this campaign and new additional information as well. In March 2021, it is really interesting to discuss about that because right after the McAfee publication about Operation Diànxùn, we observed an infrastructure update and some change from the threat actors. And in May 2021, we also observed some new modifications such as infrastructure update and new tooling. Now, Thibault will talk more about the recent activity we observe and some of the mechanisms we use to uncover recent activities.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. So as mentioned before, in March 2021, when we released this blog, the blog mentioned by Thomas, we notify some new activities with new C2 and a new release of domain, as you can see on the screenshot on the right. The Flash ID is still there, but they changed the naming. So now at this period, that was the flashupdate.com. And regarding this domain, we try to initiate an analysis of all the tools used, and we retrieve the same .NET loader as before, but a new hash. It's also hosted on the same location as the previous infrastructure, so in HK. And we also discovered another CobaltStrike C2, font.lala.com, basically used as a stage 3 also. On the next slide, there is the infrastructure at the period of May. So as you can see, there's still the Flash ID with the flashup.info. The infrastructure changed a little bit. So as you can see on the left, there is the flash.com.cn. That's almost the same as the real Flash website used in China. And regarding the update of the tooling, as you can see on the screenshot on the right bottom, the NPS tool is a Chinese tool for penetration testing and also used as a proxy connection. We thought that the idea behind using this tool is to hide the real CobaltStrike C2 server, because as you can see, the infrastructure is a little bit more developed with CobaltStrike Stager regarding IPs and so on. It's open source. It's the GitHub link is over there. If you want to take a look, it's fully comments in Chinese, but you can take a look at it. And the main update that we saw is the using of a homemade manager named CrossSS platform. As you can see on the left, you can see what the admin connection looks like. The first version on the top left and the last release on the bottom left. And on the right is the architecture of how the management platform is built. So as you can see, it's a lot of tasks to manage the victim, the asset that you need to work on your campaign and so on. But basically, it's used by Chinese user in China, basically, to manage some assets and so on. Something that we try to take a look is to go a little bit deeper, because as we saw, it's used by this actor on this campaign, but the idea was to also find some other C2 maybe used by other actors and so on. So basically, by looking at the source code of the website on the page, we saw a little comment in Chinese that we translate, obviously, talking about that those file has been provided by a user. But just take care, some files has been backdoored from this source code because it's a free one and provided on a known Chinese forum. So basically, that's what we tried to do, was to recover those sources by take a look at those Chinese forum by Googling, literally. On the bottom left, you can see it's a comment made by a provider of this code source. And with a little guidance to explain that how to use it and what values you have to modify to have something up and running quickly with the domain example and so on. And by trying to map and get an overview of all platform use with this name, with Shodan and so on, we saw that all those those platform has been used in China, or at least hosted in China and HK. A little part of the CobaltStrike C2. So yeah, there is a little update regarding the domains and so on. But what we provide you a screenshot is because we found a watermark on those beacon used. The watermark, it's just the license ID attributed to CobaltStrike to a user of a CobaltStrike with a CobaltStrike licenses, which means that this license ID is unique, which means that if you found a new CobaltStrike C2 and a beacon with this watermark, it means that it's gonna be used by the same actor, or at least we can attribute this to the same actor. So that's what we also use to map a little bit more and get some news Counter-Strike C2. Some additional scene for fun and profit. So basically, we take a look at the AS used by the new campaign in May, and by taking a look with some passive DNS and so on, regarding by using RecyQ, we saw that this campaign and the previous one were hosted on the same AS on Alibaba. Not a surprise, obviously. And also by looking for the WHOIS data, we notified some emails used to register some new domains to build and maintain a new campaign regarding for that new one, Microsoft, with the Microsoft.cn, as you can see, with a little puny with RNI. And those emails are still used to build some new campaign.
Thank you, Thibault. To conclude on this presentation, so our analyses are mostly based on multiple factors, such as we discussed, geopolitical context, as well as analysis on the victimologies, the TTPs and operating method in this specific campaign, and as well as the analysis of the tools and the infrastructures. It's really interesting to talk about the specific case because after publishing the report, it was interesting to see that the threat actors updated some of their tools as well as some of their infrastructures. We hope you enjoyed this presentation and you find it useful. If you want more details about this operation and campaign, you can go to our McAfee website to take a look to the full report. And if you have any question, just feel free to let us know. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Bye-bye.